Water rushed violently into her lungs. Grace Rivers had no time to scream. She only felt Camilla's hands on her back, the sharp push, and then the world turned blue. Cold. Impossible. The white dress they had forced her to wear inflated like a broken parachute, dragging her toward the bottom of the pool. Her arms moved clumsily, desperately. She didn't know how to swim. Above, on the bright surface of the water, the laughter continued. The clinking of champagne glasses. The soft music of the brunch. Nobody moved. Nobody shouted. Only her daughter, Lily, from somewhere far away, screamed her name with a voice that shattered into pieces. But someone was watching. From the second-floor window, hidden behind glass fogged by the morning vapor, an older man held a cell phone in his hand. His gray eyes, tired of so many things, filled with something new, contained fury. He recorded every second, every laugh, every indifferent face. And when Camilla turned toward her guests, shaking her wet hands with a fake apologetic smile, that man murmured a single word. It's over. Nobody knew who he really was. Nobody knew what power he held. But what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. If this story already touched your heart in this first minute, subscribe to the channel. Here you'll find stories that heal, inspire, and make you believe in human goodness again. But before understanding how everything exploded, we have to go back, 3 weeks earlier, when Grace still believed that silence was the only way to survive. Grace Rivers cleaned the windows of Sterling Manor with precise, almost invisible movements. She had learned not to make noise, not to exist too much. In a house like that, housekeepers were part of the decor, useful, quiet, forgettable. She was 32 years old, but her hands looked older. Veins marked by bleach, short nails, no polish. Her face was serene, the kind that stores entire storms without showing a single crack. Black hair pulled back in a tight braid, impeccable gray uniform. Behind her, running between the columns of the main hall, Lily laughed while trying to catch a paper butterfly she had made herself. 7 years old. Huge eyes, full of questions that Grace didn't always know how to answer. "Mommy, why does Mrs. Camilla always look at you mean?" Grace stopped for a second. Just one. Then kept cleaning. "She doesn't look at me mean, sweetheart. She's busy. But she does look at you mean." Lily was right. Camilla Ashford Sterling looked at her as if she were a stain on her perfect world, a stain that needed to disappear. Camilla was 28 years old, but seemed to have been born knowing how to dominate a space. Tall, salon blonde, with that kind of beauty that doesn't age because it's made of money and discipline. She married Ethan Sterling 2 years ago. He was an architect, heir to a real estate fortune, and she was the queen of a house she never built. Ethan was different. Quiet, polite, always with a tired smile. Sometimes he looked at Grace as if he wanted to say something, but he never did. Men like him didn't talk to housekeepers. Not really. That morning, Camilla came down the stairs in heels that echoed like warnings. She wore an ivory dress, fitted, perfect. Her perfume filled the hall before her voice did. "Grace, did you finish with the windows?" "Yes, ma'am." "Well, now I need you to clean the terrace. We have guests coming Saturday. Important people. Nothing can be out of place." "Yes, ma'am." Camilla came closer, so close that Grace could smell the coffee on her breath. "And please, control your daughter. I don't want her running around the whole house. This isn't a playground." Grace pressed her lips together, took a deep breath. "Understood, ma'am." Camilla smiled. That smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Meanwhile, in the back garden, an older man pruned the rose bushes with an artisan's patience. Mr. Harold, the new gardener. He arrived 3 weeks ago without much noise. White hair, wrinkled hands, calm gaze. He spoke few words. But when he did, there was always something deep behind them. Grace greeted him respectfully every morning. He returned a small smile, almost paternal. What she didn't know was that Mr. Harold wasn't a gardener. He was Ethan's father, the true owner of everything, and he was there for a very specific reason, to discover who really was the woman his son had brought into his life. That afternoon, while Grace swept the terrace under the merciless sun, Mr. Harold watched from the greenhouse shadows. He wrote things in an old notebook, dates, attitudes, glances, and in his chest grew an uncomfortable certainty. Something in that house was deeply broken. Friday night, Camilla dined alone with Ethan. Candles, expensive wine. She talked to him about Saturday's party, about the important names coming, about how everything had to be perfect. Ethan barely listened. His mind was somewhere else, on the blueprints of a project, on Lily's laugh he had heard that morning. On the way, Grace never complained about anything. "Are you listening to me?" asked Camilla with that voice that seemed like velvet with thorns. "Yes, honey. Everything will turn out fine." She smiled, but her eyes calculated something more, something that Grace still couldn't see coming. And what Camilla planned for that brunch was going to change everything, forever. Grace wasn't always a housekeeper. There was a time, years ago, when she worked as an administrative assistant at a logistics company. She had a small apartment, plans, a husband who promised to stay. But life has cruel ways of rewriting happy endings. When Lily was born, her husband disappeared. No letter, no explanation, just an absence that became permanent. Grace tried to move forward alone, but the company closed. Debts grew. And one day, watching her daughter sleep on a borrowed mattress, she decided that dignity isn't measured by the work you do, but by how you do it. That's how she arrived at Sterling Manor. She answered an ad, passed 3 interviews, and when they offered her the job with housing included for her and her daughter, she accepted without hesitation. That was a year ago. Since then, Grace woke up at 5 in the morning, prepared breakfast, cleaned every corner of that enormous house, ironed, cooked, organized, and at the end of the day, when Lily was already asleep, she sat in the small room they shared and read old books she found in the mansion's library. She never complained, never asked for more than necessary. And that, precisely that, was what bothered Camilla most, because Camilla couldn't tolerate anyone in that house being more noble than her. Saturday dawned bright, perfect, the kind of day that seems made for magazine photos. Camilla supervised every detail of the brunch with military precision. The tables on the terrace covered with white tablecloths, fresh flowers in crystal vases, canapes, fruits, champagne bottles chilling in ice buckets. And then, at 10 in the morning, she called Grace to her room. "I need you to help me with something special today." Grace nodded, waiting for instructions. Camilla opened her closet and pulled out a dress. White, elegant, completely out of place for a housekeeper. "I want you to wear it." Grace blinked. "Ma'am, very important people are coming today. I need you to serve drinks, bring the trays, but I want you to look presentable. This dress is old. It doesn't fit me anymore. Wear it." Grace looked at the dress. It was beautiful, but something in Camilla's smile turned her stomach. "Ma'am, I prefer to wear my uniform." "I'm not asking, Grace, I'm telling you." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. "Yes, ma'am." When Grace left the room with the dress in her hands, she felt a knot in her throat. She didn't know why, but something about all this smelled wrong. From the second-floor window, Mr. Harold watched the terrace. He had agreed to help with the decorative plants that morning, just to be close, just to see. He had spent 3 weeks studying Camilla, the way she talked to suppliers, how she treated the cleaning staff, the way she despised anyone who couldn't offer her something. And every day that passed, his disappointment grew. Ethan was his only son, a good man, but naive. He had fallen in love with Camilla at a charity gala, dazzled by her beauty and apparent sophistication. Mr. Harold tried to warn him. But children never listen when the heart screams louder than reason. So he decided to do something different. He disguised himself as a gardener. used a fake name, and entered his own son's house as just another employee. Because sometimes the truth only reveals itself when nobody knows you're watching. That morning, while adjusting the orchids on the terrace, he heard Camilla talking with one of her friends. "Today's going to be fun. You'll see." "What are you planning, Cammy?" "Just a little reminder, so certain people know their place." Camilla's laugh sounded like breaking glass. Mr. Harold squeezed the pruning shears so hard his knuckles turned white. At 11, the guests began to arrive. Businessmen, influencers, people whose value is measured in followers and bank accounts. Everyone smiled. Everyone drank. Everyone pretended interest in empty conversations. And in the middle of all that, Grace appeared in the white dress. She looked uncomfortable, out of place, but beautiful, with a simple, honest beauty that doesn't need makeup or jewelry to shine. Ethan saw her from afar, and something in his chest moved. He didn't know what, but he felt a stab of guilt for not having seen her before, really seen her. Camilla also saw her, and her smile sharpened like a knife. "Grace, bring more champagne, and make sure to offer it to everyone." With a smile, Grace obeyed. She walked between the tables, filling glasses, receiving condescending looks, some comments disguised as compliments. "What a pretty housekeeper you have, Camilla." "Yes, she's a gem. Though sometimes you have to remind them who's in charge, you know." The laughter multiplied. Lily watched from her room's window with her heart tight. Something bad was going to happen. She felt it. And then, while Grace bent to serve a glass, Camilla approached from behind. "Careful, Grace. Don't trip." And with a subtle movement, almost imperceptible, Camilla extended her foot. Grace stumbled. The tray tilted. 2 glasses fell to the floor, crashing against the tiles. The silence was instant. Everyone looked, some with pity, others with cruel amusement. Camilla brought her hand to her chest, feigning surprise. "Oh, Grace. Be more careful, please." Grace bent down to pick up the glass. Her hands trembled, but she said nothing, because silence, for her, had always been the only armor. But what was coming was going to break that silence forever. The brunch continued as if nothing had happened. Conversations resumed. Glasses filled again. Soft music wrapped the terrace in a false sense of calm. But something had changed in the air. An invisible tension, like the moment just before a storm breaks. Grace picked up the last glass fragments carefully, feeling the stares fixed on her back. Some amused, others indifferent, none compassionate. Camilla moved among her guests with a dancer's grace, laughing at the exact moment, touching arms with studied familiarity. It was a perfect performance, and she knew it. Ethan sat at one of the tables, talking with a partner about a new project, but his eyes kept returning to Grace. There was something in the way she kept her head high, even kneeling on the ground, that unsettled him. From the second-floor window, Mr. Harold already had his phone in hand. He didn't know exactly what he was waiting for, but his instinct told him something was about to explode, and he wasn't wrong. After picking up the glass, Grace returned to the kitchen. She washed her hands with cold water, trying to calm the trembling she couldn't control. She breathed deeply. Once, twice. "It's nothing," she told herself quietly. "Just another day." But when she came out again with a tray of canapes, she found Camilla waiting in the hallway. "Grace, darling, are you okay?" The tone was sweet. Too sweet. "Yes, ma'am. I'm worried you're so nervous. I don't want my guests thinking you don't know how to do your job." Grace swallowed hard. "I'll be more careful." "I hope so." Camilla came closer, lowering her voice. "Because it would be a shame if you had to look for another place. With a small child, it can't be easy finding work." The message was clear, and it hurt more than any shout. Grace nodded silently and returned to the terrace. The hours passed slowly, sticky. The sun climbed to its highest point. The heat became suffocating. Some guests took refuge under umbrellas. Others approached the pool, commenting on how refreshing the water looked. Camilla had an idea. "You know what? We should do something fun." Her voice sounded animated, almost childish. "A game. What do you have in mind?" asked one of her friends, a woman with red lips and scandalous laughter. "Something simple. A little balance test." Camilla walked toward Grace, who was collecting empty plates in a corner. "Grace, come here a moment." Grace left the tray and approached, feeling all eyes land on her. "Yes, ma'am." "Stand here, by the pool. I want to show you something." Grace obeyed, though every muscle in her body screamed for her to run. She stood at the pool's edge, the blue water shining at her feet like a liquid abyss. Camilla positioned herself behind her, smiling toward her guests. "See? Sometimes life is like this. You're on the edge, and it only takes a little push to change everything." And then she did it. Camilla's hands rested firmly on Grace's back and pushed. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a game. It was deliberate, cruel, calculated. Grace fell forward. The world tilted. Lily's scream from somewhere far away, the sound of water receiving her. And then silence beneath the surface. The white dress inflated around her body, heavy, tangling in her legs. Grace tried to move her arms, but she didn't know how. Water entered through her nose, her mouth. It burned. Her lungs begged for air that didn't come. She thought of Lily, of her laugh, of her questions, of her future, and she thought maybe this was the end. Above on the terrace, nobody moved. Some guests laughed, thinking it was part of the game. Others looked uncomfortable, but nobody did anything. The silence of complicity is the worst of all. Camilla shook her hands as if she had just touched something dirty and turned to her friends with a smile. "Oops, I hope she knows how to swim." More laughter, nervous, forced. But from the second-floor window, Mr. Harold wasn't laughing. He recorded everything, every second, every face, every cowardly laugh. And when he saw that nobody was diving into the water, he left his phone, took off his shoes, and ran down the stairs. Ethan also reacted. Something in Lily's scream woke him. He jumped up, pushing people aside, and ran toward the pool. He arrived just as Mr. Harold dove into the water. The old man entered with a strong splash, swimming with firm strokes toward the sinking body. He took Grace by the waist, lifted her, and brought her to the surface. Ethan knelt at the edge, helping to pull her up. Grace coughed, spitting water, breathing with difficulty. She trembled. Her lips were blue. Lily ran from the house crying and hugged her mother so hard she almost knocked her down again. "Mommy, Mommy, you're okay! Mommy!" Grace hugged her, unable to speak. She could only cry. Mr. Harold came out of the water, soaked, breathing heavily. He looked at Camilla. She was pale, with her smile frozen on her face. "It was an accident," she stammered. "I was just playing." Mr. Harold approached slowly. Water dripped from his clothes. His gray eyes shone with a fury he had never shown before. "It's over," he murmured with a voice that cut the air. Camilla stepped back. Who are you?" Mr. Harold didn't answer. He just took the phone from his shirt pocket, protected in a waterproof case, and raised the screen for everyone to see. The video began playing. Camilla's hands pushing Grace, the fall, the laughter, the indifference. Everything was recorded. Camilla opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And then, from behind, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Dad?" Ethan looked at Mr. Harold with wide eyes, incredulous. Mr. Harold nodded slowly. "Yes, son. It's me." And what came next? Nobody on that terrace would ever forget. The silence that followed was dense, crushing. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. It was as if time itself had stopped to witness what was about to come. Ethan looked at his father with a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and something that seemed like relief. He hadn't seen him in months. Mr. Harold had disappeared after an argument about the wedding, telling his son he needed time to think. Ethan assumed he was angry, that he had distanced himself out of pride. He never imagined he'd be living in his own house, disguised as a gardener, watching everything. What are you doing here?" asked Ethan, still processing. Mr. Harold wiped water from his face with a trembling hand. His voice came out calm but firm. "I came to see who really was the woman you married." Camilla stepped back as if those words had physically hit her. Her face, always so controlled, began to crumble. "Harold, this was a misunderstanding." "No." The old man's voice cut the air like a sharp blade. "This was cruelty. And it's recorded." He raised the phone again. On the screen, the video kept playing on loop. The hands pushing. The fall. The laughter. Everything. The guests began murmuring among themselves. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others took out their own phones, as if they wanted to document what was happening. Because in a world where everything is content, even tragedies become spectacle. Ethan walked toward Camilla, his eyes filled with something she had never seen in him. Disappointment. Deep disillusionment. "Why?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you do something like this?" Camilla opened her mouth, searching for words, searching for excuses, but there were none that could save her. "I was playing. I didn't think that she didn't know how to swim." "That's not a game, Camilla." Ethan ran his hands through his hair, frustrated, broken. That's violence." Grace remained sitting on the ground, hugging Lily, trembling under a towel someone had brought her. She said nothing, but her eyes said everything. The pain, the humiliation, the fear she had felt under the water, thinking she would never see her daughter again. "Mr." Harold knelt in front of her, with a tenderness that contrasted with the hardness he had just shown. "Are you okay, daughter?" Grace nodded, though tears kept falling. "Thank you. Thank you for saving me. You don't have to thank me. Nobody should have had to save you. This should never have happened." He stood slowly and looked at the guests who were still there, like uncomfortable statues. Everyone saw what happened, and nobody did anything. His voice rose, full of indignation. "You all stood there laughing, watching, as if this were entertainment. Some lowered their gaze. Others murmured inaudible apologies. But nobody stayed. One by one, they began to leave, without saying goodbye, without saying anything, just fleeing from the discomfort of being witnesses to their own cowardice. In less than 10 minutes, the terrace was empty. Only Camilla, Ethan, Mr. Harold, Grace, and Lily remained. Camilla tried to approach Ethan, extending a trembling hand toward him. "Ethan, please. We can talk about this. It was a mistake. I was stressed with the pressure of the party and—" "No." Ethan stepped back as if her touch burned. "There's no excuse for this. There's no explanation that justifies what you did. But I love you." "No. You love what I represent. The house, the money, the status. But you've never loved me. And you've definitely never respected anyone in this house." Mr. Harold approached his son and put a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, this house is yours. I gave it to you when you got married. But the family estate, the businesses, the properties, all that is still in my name. And I have every right to decide who enters and who leaves this family." Camilla paled. What are you saying?" Mr. Harold looked directly into her eyes. "I'm saying I want you to leave. Now. Today." "You can't do that. I'm married to your son. And my son can make his own decisions. But as long as I'm alive, I won't allow someone like you to keep hurting innocent people under this roof." Ethan took a deep breath. He closed his eyes. And when he opened them, he had made a decision. "I want a divorce, Camilla." She let out a choked sob. She tried to approach again, but he raised a hand, stopping her. "No, it's decided. I'll talk to the lawyers tomorrow. You can stay tonight in the guest room, but tomorrow I want you gone." Camilla looked at him with hatred, with rage, as if she had just woken from a dream and discovered everything had collapsed. "You're going to pay for this," she whispered, her voice broken. "Both of you. Everyone." Mr. Harold smiled, but there was no humor in that smile. Threaten us all you want, but the video is already saved. And if you try anything, if you touch anyone in this house, I'll make it public. And believe me, Camilla, your reputation won't survive that. Camilla opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Only mute rage. She turned and entered the house, her heels echoing like shots against the marble. When the door closed behind her, the air seemed to loosen. Ethan sat in one of the chairs, exhausted. He covered his face with his hands. I can't believe I didn't see it before. Mr. Harold sat beside him. Sometimes love blinds us, son. Don't blame yourself. But now you know, and now you can correct the course. Grace remained sitting on the ground, hugging Lily. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know if she should say anything. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he saw the woman who had been living under his roof for a year, the woman who worked without complaining, who raised her daughter with love, who cleaned his house, cooked his food, and never asked for anything in return. Grace, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything that happened, and I'm sorry I didn't see it before. Grace shook her head, tears falling freely. It's not your fault, sir. Yes, it is, because I allowed this to happen. Mr. Harold stood slowly, his bones creaking from the effort. He approached Grace and extended his hand. Come, let's go inside. You need to change. Have something warm, and your girl needs to see you well. Grace accepted his hand and stood, wobbling slightly. Lily wouldn't let go, clinging to her waist as if she feared the water would take her again. They entered the house in silence. Mr. Harold guided Grace to the room she shared with her daughter, a small but clean space in the service wing. He brought her a blanket and told her to rest. Tomorrow we'll talk, but today, just rest. When he closed the door, Grace let herself fall onto the bed. Lily curled up beside her, still trembling. Mommy, that man saved you. Yes, sweetie. Who is he? Someone good. Someone very good. Outside, in the main hall, Mr. Harold and Ethan sat face to face. The silence between them was heavy, full of unspoken words. Why didn't you tell me you were here? Ethan finally asked. Because if I told you, you would have tried to protect her. And I needed her to show who she really was. And if nothing had happened, then I would have been wrong. And I would have been happy to be wrong. Mr. Harold sighed. But I wasn't, son. And you know it. Ethan nodded, his gaze lost. I married her because I thought it was what I should do. She was beautiful, intelligent, from a good family. Everything seemed perfect. Paper can seem perfect, son, but what matters is what's written on it. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. And I never took the time to read. Mr. Harold put a hand over his son's. But now you have, and now you can start over. That night, Camilla didn't come down for dinner. She stayed locked in the guest room, making furious calls to her friends, her lawyers, anyone who could hear her version of events. But nobody believed her, because the video said everything. The next morning, when the sun was just beginning to peek through the windows, Camilla came down the stairs with 3 suitcases. Her face was pale, without makeup. She looked years older. Ethan was waiting in the foyer. The driver will take you wherever you want, he said in a neutral voice. My lawyers will contact you this week. Camilla looked at him with eyes full of contained rage. This isn't going to end like this. Yes, Camilla. Yes, it will. She clenched her jaw, took her suitcases, and went out the door without looking back. When the car disappeared down the gravel driveway, Ethan released the air he didn't know he was holding. Mr. Harold appeared at his side with 2 cups of coffee. How do you feel? Empty, but also relieved. That's normal. The end of something always hurts, even when it's necessary. They drank coffee in silence, watching the garden wake with the dawn light. Later that morning, Mr. Harold knocked on Grace's door. She opened, still with dark circles, but with clean clothes and hair pulled back. Good morning, Mr. Harold. Good morning, Grace. May I come in? She nodded, nervous. Lily played on the floor with rag dolls. Mr. Harold sat in the room's only chair. "I want to make you a proposal." Grace remained standing, hands clasped. "A proposal? I have a foundation. It's called New Horizons Foundation. We work with women in vulnerable situations, helping them get employment, education, housing. We need someone to coordinate the personal support area, someone who understands what it is to start from zero, someone with empathy, strength, and dignity." He paused. "And I believe that person is you." Grace blinked, not understanding. "Me? But I don't have formal training in that. You have something better than training, Grace. You have experience, and you have heart." Mr. Harold leaned forward. "I'm going to pay you a fair salary. You'll have your own apartment for you and your daughter, and if you want to study, the foundation will support you." Tears began falling down Grace's cheeks before she could stop them. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Grace brought her hands to her face, sobbing. Lily left her dolls and ran to her, hugging her. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "Because I'm happy, sweetheart. Very happy." Mr. Harold smiled. That warm, paternal smile he had been hiding for weeks. "So, is it a yes?" Grace nodded, unable to speak. "Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me, daughter. Just be yourself. That's more than enough." The following days were a whirlwind of changes. Grace began working at the foundation, learning quickly, connecting with women who arrived seeking help. Each story reminded her of her own. And every time she saw someone stand up, she felt she was standing up a little more too. Ethan, for his part, began to rediscover his own house. Without Camilla, the place seemed bigger, more breathable. He spent more time in the garden, helping his father with the plants. And little by little, he began talking more with Grace. It wasn't forced, just casual conversations, about Lily, about work, about life. And at some point, without either realizing it, those conversations became the best part of their days. One afternoon, while Grace prepared coffee in the foundation's kitchen, Ethan appeared with a box of books. "I found these in the house library. I thought maybe they could help with the literacy program." Grace smiled, surprised. "Thank you. You didn't have to bother." "It's no bother." Ethan set the box on the table. "Besides, I wanted to see you." There was silence. One of those that doesn't make uncomfortable, but invites. "Do you want some coffee?" Grace asked. "I'd love that." They sat together, talking about everything and nothing. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt he was exactly where he should be. But life is rarely simple. And what neither of them knew was that this was only the beginning. 3 months later, Sterling Manor no longer felt like a mausoleum of appearances. There was laughter, music, light that entered through windows and didn't get trapped in corners. Lily ran through the garden chasing real butterflies, not paper ones. Mr. Harold followed her with his gaze, smiling from his chair under the cherry tree. He had aged in the last year, but his eyes still shone with that spark of someone who knows they did the right thing. Grace no longer lived in the mansion, but she came often, sometimes to visit Mr. Harold, other times because Ethan invited her to dinner. Always with Lily, always with that mix of shyness and warmth that characterized her. The divorce had been quick and clean. Camilla didn't fight. She knew it was pointless. The video was never made public, but the threat was enough. She left the country, according to rumors, to somewhere nobody knew her, where she could reinvent herself again. Ethan didn't miss her. He only regretted taking so long to see the truth. One Friday afternoon, Grace arrived at the mansion with a folder full of reports. There was a meeting with the foundation's sponsors, and Mr. Harold had asked her to help prepare the presentation. When she entered the study, she found Ethan instead of his father. "And Mr. Harold?" "He fell asleep in the garden. I decided to let him rest." Ethan smiled. "But I can help you if you want." Grace hesitated a second, then nodded. "Sure." They sat together, reviewing numbers, adjusting charts, discussing strategies. And at some point, between one sentence and another, their hands brushed on the desk. Both stopped. Ethan looked at her. Really looked at her. "Grace, can I tell you something?" She nodded, feeling her heart beat faster. "These last months have been the clearest of my life, and a big part of that is because of you." Grace lowered her gaze, nervous. "I just did my job." "No, you did much more." Ethan took her hand carefully, as if he feared it would break. "You showed me what dignity means. Strength. Real kindness, not the kind that's acted for cameras." Grace looked up. Her eyes were moist. "Ethan, I don't know if this is right. Why wouldn't it be? Because I was your housekeeper. Because people will talk. Because you're afraid this is another version of what happened before." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "But it's not, Grace. This is real. And I know it because I've never in my life felt something like this." Tears fell freely down Grace's face. "Me neither." Ethan smiled, and slowly, carefully, he leaned toward her. The kiss was soft, shy, full of promises neither dared pronounce yet. When they separated, Grace let out a nervous laugh. "Lily's going to go crazy when she finds out. Do you think she'll be okay with it?" "I think she already adores you." "So yes." Ethan laughed. And for the first time in a long time, the weight he had been carrying in his chest disappeared. From the garden window, Mr. Harold watched the scene with a satisfied smile. He wasn't asleep. He never was. He just wanted to give them space, because he knew what was growing between them was fragile, beautiful, and needed to grow without interference. That night, during dinner, Lily asked something that left everyone silent. "Mommy, can Mr. Ethan be my dad?" Grace almost choked on her water. "Lily, honey, you can't." "I think he'd be a good dad, and you like him. I know it." Mr. Harold let out a laugh. Ethan turned red. Grace looked at her daughter with a mix of embarrassment and tenderness. "Lily, those things aren't said like that." "Why not?" Because they're adult things." Lily frowned. "Adults complicate everything." Mr. Harold slapped the table with his palm, still laughing. "That girl is right. Adults do complicate everything." Ethan looked at Grace. She returned his gaze. And in that silence, both knew that whatever they were building was worth it. The following months were of discovery. Ethan and Grace took their time. They went for walks. They talked for hours. He taught her about architecture. She taught him about resilience. Lily always accompanied them with her contagious laugh and impossible questions. And Mr. Harold watched everything with the peace of someone who knows their work is done. One afternoon, while planting new flowers in the garden, Ethan knelt beside Grace and asked something he had been rehearsing for weeks. "Would you stay?" Grace stopped digging. "Stay? Here. With me. With us. Not as a housekeeper. Not as a guest. But as family." Grace felt tears returning. But this time they weren't from pain. They were from something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll stay." Ethan took her hand, and this time she didn't let go. From the porch, Mr. Harold raised his teacup in a silent toast. "Well done, son, well done." And so, what began with a fall ended with an awakening. 5 years later, Sterling Manor was no longer just a house. It was a refuge, a support center for women who needed to start over. The rooms that were once empty were now filled with voices, stories, second chances. Grace directed the program with the same dedication she once cleaned windows with. But now, her title was Director of Comprehensive Support. And her office had a garden view. Lily, now 12 years old, ran across the lawn chasing the twins, Sophie and Emma, 4 years old, dark hair, bright eyes, daughters of Grace and Ethan. Ethan watched them from the terrace with a smile that no longer knew tiredness. He had redesigned part of the mansion to convert it into a functional, warm, welcoming space, and every corner carried his mark and Grace's. Mr. Harold sat in his favorite chair under the cherry tree. Now he used a cane. His steps were slower, but his gaze remained the same. Wise, serene, full of love. Grace approached and sat beside him with 2 cups of tea. "How do you feel, Mr. Harold?" "Like a man who did the right thing." He smiled. "And that, daughter, is the best gift life can give. Thank you for everything, for seeing me when nobody else did. I didn't see you, Grace. You were already there. I just made sure others noticed too." Grace rested her head on his shoulder. And for a moment, they stayed like that, in silence, watching the girls play, watching how life, despite everything, had found a way to flourish. That night, before sleeping, Ethan hugged Grace in the bed they now shared. "You know, sometimes I still can't believe all this is real." "What?" "This. Us. The girls. The foundation. Everything." Grace smiled in the darkness. "Well, believe it, because it's real. And it's ours." Ethan kissed her forehead. "I love you. I love you too." And in the night's silence, while the wind swayed the curtains, both knew they had found something money never buys. A true home. Because sometimes it's not about who pushed you, but about who saw you fall and decided to lift you up. And in that act of seeing, of choosing, of staying, the loves that last forever are built. What would you have done in Grace's place? And if they push you, who would lift you? If this story moved you, if it made you believe in the justice of the heart, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember that there are always good people watching. There's always someone who sees, and always, always, it's worth staying on your feet. See you in the next story. Because here, every tale heals, every word inspires, and every ending is a new beginning.